and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup.
And in the news this week, big news.
Big.
The President of the United States has come out for the Equality Act, which is our new federal LGBT rights bill, thanks to Ann Northrup and her friends.
A few other people, but we're very excited about this. This is going right along. But the Mormon Church has told the children of gay parents that they cannot be baptized and they must deny their parents.
In Iowa, a transgender woman who was traveling across a couple of states to a funeral stops in Des Moines. She was locked up for 8 days when the staff at the Drury Inn falsely accused her of being a sex worker.
It's an unbelievable story and just epitomizes everything that's wrong and why we need the Equality Act and a lot of education in this country. But in better news, a school district in New Mexico has made a transgender girl beyond happy.
The governor-elect of Kentucky promises to help Kim Davis, while the Sixth Circuit slaps her down.
There is progress in the country of Colombia for LGBT parents.
But in Slovenia, they're going to have to vote on same-sex marriage on December 20th, because the right wing would like that.
And the Ukrainian parliament hates us so much that they have voted to block gay rights protections, even if it means that their citizens have less ability to travel freely in Europe.
Cutting off their noses to spite their faces.
Now you sound like my mother.
Well, California may vote next year on whether actors in adult films must use condoms.
And New York City's post-exposure prophylaxis hotline is back.
And I'm going to review Keira Knightley in Thérèse Raquin and Tim Pigott-Smith in King Charles III.
But we begin with great celebrations because after weeks of avoiding the question or refusing to talk about it, the White House has announced that they do support the Equality Act, the proposed federal LGBT and other rights bill, non-discrimination bill.
All the Democrats who are running for president have endorsed the bill. Hillary Clinton,
Bernie Sanders, and Martin O'Malley.
Yes.
That's only 3 of them.
Well, that's
but
all there are.
There are a lot of co-sponsors in the Senate and House. It's been introduced in both houses of Congress. And the genius of this bill, and I should take one step back historically, non-discrimination laws covering sexual orientation and gender identity and expression exist in less than half the states in this country and in other cities and municipalities. And people are shocked at the idea that, as the candidates are now fond of saying, you could be married on Saturday and fired on Monday.
It's true.
Well, it is true.
And the Human Rights Campaign likes to say that 69% of Americans support these protections, even though not only what is it, 39% in Houston.
Well, for 40 years, we have been trying to pass a federal non-discrimination law. There have been many attempts, there have been many versions, it's gotten progress in some years and not in others. But finally, we decided that we needed to write the bill we really want, a fully inclusive, comprehensive bill that covers employment, housing, public accommodations, credit, government programs, everything across the board, and in an attempt to further give it a good chance to pass, not only does it add sexual orientation and gender identity to the 1964 Civil Rights Act, but it amends a few other laws to fix some missing parts, to expand protections for women and for race, where those protections are missing in some other laws. So it's a really comprehensive update of civil rights laws.
And most of the big civil rights groups, all the LGBT groups are for it. Most of the big civil rights groups are for it. However, Wade Henderson, who is the president of what's called the Leadership Council on Civil Rights and Civil and Human Rights, which is the coalition of all the groups down there in Washington, they still have questions about it. They support the concept of the act, so they're still still not there.
Look, they've been great allies for many, many years. They've worked with the LGBT groups for at least 20 years, maybe longer, on many bills and many laws. So I think this is just a little timing thing on their part. And we've been pressing the White House as we've gotten sponsors in the Senate and the House. We keep going to the White House and saying, come on, isn't the president going to support this? The presidential candidates, as you say, on the Democratic side have supported it. So gay reporters go to the White House press briefings and keep asking the press secretary, is the president going to support this bill?
This show used to have a White House correspondent. At one time.
And that is
one
really
of the first ones.
The Wayback Machine.
Yes.
But he keeps, the Washington Blade reporter Chris Johnson kept getting put off on asking this question. I don't have anything for you on that yet. We're still studying this. It's very complicated.
We support gay rights.
We have
Didn't you see us on the cover of The Advocate?
We have to look at all the details. So this week, Chris Johnson again goes to the White House and asks this, but this time it's all set up.
Yes.
Clearly, he's been told, all right, you can ask the question again, and this time we're going to answer it, because Josh Earnest, the White House press secretary, has a speech he's going to give, and we're going to show you the tape, and you'll see that he's reading off a prepared statement of what he is prepared to say about this bill. They have finally decided to come out for it, probably because the Houston vote went against us, and so that becomes the hook to say we really do need non-discrimination laws.
And the fact that all the Democratic hopefuls for president are supporting it, so the party needs to get, and the party's going to endorse it.
Yes, the party is going to endorse it. But that's next year.
Not the Republican Party, by the way.
Well, who knows?
Hope springs eternal.
We have months and months to go. And more on that in a second. But let us show you the White House press briefing where Chris Johnson of the Washington Blade, whose voice you'll hear, asks Josh Earnest, the White House press secretary, once again about the Equality Act and the Obama administration's support of it.
Chris.
Josh, following the defeat at the ballot last week of the LGBT inclusive non-discrimination ordinance in Houston, you told us, as a general matter, the administration believes in preventing discrimination. But will the president take this opportunity to endorse a federal non-discrimination bill against anti-LGBT discrimination known as the Equality Act?
Well, Chris, I can tell you that this is something the administration has been reviewing for several weeks now. And upon that review, it is now clear that the administration strongly supports the Equality Act. That bill is historic legislation that would advance the cause of equality for millions of Americans. And we certainly are pleased with the many legislators in Congress that have stepped forward to try to advance a bill that would deliver comprehensive equal rights for LGBT Americans. And we look forward to working with Congress to ensure that the legislative process produces a result that balances both the bedrock principles of civil rights, like those I've just described, with the religious liberty that we hold dear in this country.
As you mentioned, the bill was under review before at the White House. What issue, what legislation has now been resolved, enabling you to announce support at this time?
Well, as I noted, Chris, I think the last time that we discussed this, the Equality Act would have an impact on a substantial number of government policies. And so there was a review that was conducted to evaluate exactly what impact the law would have on a wide range of government policies and programs. And after concluding that review and determining that that this kind of legislation would achieve the desired effect, we believe that we can support it, and we can do so knowing that at the same time we can protect the religious liberty that's also enshrined in our Constitution.
To what extent will the bill be a legislative priority in the final years of the administration, and do you anticipate Obama himself will speak out about it?
Well, if asked about it, I anticipate the president would certainly be willing to have a conversation with all of you about it. But I would anticipate that well, the administration does look forward to working with Congress to try to advance this legislation, consistent with the values that we have articulated about the importance of equal rights and making sure that people can't be discriminated against because of who they love. Well, at the same time, making sure that we can protect religious liberty at the same time. And the president's confident that as this bill works its way through the legislative process, that's something that can certainly be achieved.
Well, he's very careful to mention religious liberty a couple of times there, but the fact is that the religious exemptions in this bill are the standard ones. They're not the expanded bad ones that were in the Employment Non-Discrimination Act.
Exactly, and that's what we were fighting, and that's why we wanted this new bill. But, of course, some of the Republicans say, well, that's what got the Republicans on board, and I don't believe there are any Republicans. To ENDA.
Yeah.
I don't believe there are any Republican sponsors yet for the Equality Act. And some of them are resisting it as like, oh, this is a Democratic Party put-up job to embarrass us and that kind of stuff. I'm just saying this is the politics of it.
Look, they don't want any Democratic bills to pass, especially as we get closer to the election, because they think that whole construct embarrasses them and gives a rationale for the Democrats to be elected.
There have been votes on gay stuff within the last couple of months, and they get a number of Republicans on board on them.
Absolutely, and I would expect Republicans to come on board. And I would also point out that they just passed the budget reconciliation and the debt limit ceiling buster or whatever it was. When they want to get something done together, they can. So I wouldn't give up hope on this. And what we've always said was that this was going to take a while, and you have to start somewhere. And if you have to start now when the Republicans control the House, then so be it. But I'm not convinced that we can't, with the right push and pressure, make progress on this. And thank heavens it has been introduced in this really admirable form instead of the nonsense we've had to fight against for years.
Right. We couldn't get enthusiastic about it. And we so need it because big cities like Houston don't have protections.
Exactly.
And states like Texas don't have protections. What did we learn about Houston?
Well, Houston, we learned that it was actually quite a low turnout. Only 25% of the electorate turned out to vote.
They had a mayoral election as well.
No, not this year.
No mayor?
Not this year, no.
Okay. I thought they did.
No, she's Anise Parker is term limited now. There will be a mayoral election, but that's next year or the year after.
Sorry, folks.
She just got reelected. They also had awful weather. But then immediately after the voters rejected the non-discrimination bill in Houston, people turned to the NFL because the Super Bowl is due there in 2017, and the NFL said, forget it, we're not moving the Super Bowl away from Houston.
Although Houston was denied a bid to host the college football playoffs in 2018, 2019, and 2020, bids went to Atlanta, Santa Clara, and New Orleans. Now, they didn't say they were not doing Houston because of the gay thing, but it might have played a role. Especially with all these college students acting up around the country for their rights.
Well, yes, if the football teams themselves object, maybe we can make progress.
Correct.
There is talk in the aftermath about whether the city council, which had originally passed the non-discrimination bill that then got repealed because the right wing got enough signatures to put the vote on the ballot, whether the city council should go ahead and pass another non-discrimination bill, maybe only partial, maybe
without public accommodations.
Yes, like housing and employment only, and not public accommodations.
But there are bathrooms in the office.
Well, exactly.
Well, I mean,
so there's a debate going on in Houston about how to proceed from here.
Did we talk about the fact that the leader of the campaign for Houston that beat us there was Steve Hotsey, who in 1985 organized the Campaign for Houston Straight Slate, which was led by Mayor Louis Welch, who said the best way to end the AIDS epidemic was to shoot the queers.
There are some very horrible people involved in this.
And they won.
They did win because they grabbed on to this image of
no men in women's restrooms. That was the theme.
Well, as someone pointed out afterwards, we should have gotten on board with that. We don't want men in women's restrooms either. We want women.
Right.
All women, including trans women, in women's bathrooms.
You folks who who voted against this thing, you don't want a bearded transgender man coming into the women's room.
Although
Probably.
that's what you've just voted for.
That's what you voted for.
Ben Carson on the Houston Equal Rights Ordinance. It's not fair to how can I do a Ben Carson imitation?
Oh, you know who he sounds like? Kevin Costner. So do your Kevin Costner.
No, I can't do either one.
He sounds exactly like Kevin Costner.
I don't know if I agree with that, but whatever. He said,
close your eyes and listen to him.
Well, you have to close your eyes if you're going to speak like Ben Carson because he speaks with his eyes closed a lot of the time. Not fair to make everyone else uncomfortable. There should be separate bathrooms for trans folks. I believe in equal rights, not extra rights, and don't impose your view on everyone else. He has previously said that LGBT parents are not of the same value for raising children. This is Mr. Nice Guy.
They don't agree in Dallas. In the face of what happened in Houston, they boosted their LGBT rights law. They're looking to add gender identity and expression as a separate category. Their original law passed in 2002, and at that time they made gender identity and expression something under sexual orientation.
Right.
And they have other enhancements in the bill as well. And the Dallas Tourism Board has a campaign that says all love is big love.
Well, the other slogan they're pushing in Dallas is, Dallas, aren't you glad we're not Houston?
I have to say, I'm feeling for my brothers and sisters in Houston.
Well, sure. And, in my brief time in Houston, I found it to be a really interesting, compelling city. So I'm sure that they will make progress in Houston, but they're continuing to work on this.
All right.
Meanwhile, we mentioned Ben Carson. Let's go. Another election footnote. The Victory Fund says 29 out LGBT people were elected to offices around the country in this off-year election.
Well, we told you last week that Bobby Jindal, Ted Cruz, and Mike Huckabee spoke at this National Religious Liberties Conference in Des Moines, organized by Pastor Kevin Swanson, who was called for the death of gay people, which he did again at this conference.
Oh, my God.
He said that Paul in Romans affirms that this particular sin is worthy of death. Now, he's saying this at the conference that these candidates are speaking at. He also said, if you're the parents of a gay child and they invite you to their same-sex wedding, here's what I would do, he said. I would wear sackcloth and ashes at the door, and I would sit in cow manure, and I would spread it all over my body. I'm not kidding, he said. I'm not joking about this. This is what you need to do if you've got gay kids who are getting married. Now, and so Cruz is asked about this by Jake Tapper, CNN, and, I don't know what he said about that. I mean, well, Jake,
really?
You should have played the tape and made him sit there and look at it and say, do you ever want to have anything to do with this Kevin Swanson again?
What Andy has just said is a mild version of what Kevin Swanson did. Now, I thank and admire Rachel Maddow for playing enormous chunks of this tape on her program this week, and I considered showing some of it here. But it's, first of all, I'm guessing many of you saw it on Rachel, and it's a little depressing to watch, but I really urge you to go to rightwingwatch.org. That's a little tongue twister. Rightwingwatch.org. Wing Watch. Thank heavens there is an organization that monitors the right wing and these extremists who are promoting death to gay people.
And we do not quote every anti-gay thing we hear every week.
No.
If we did, that would be the entire show. The reason we're doing this one is because 3 credible Republican candidates for president were at this thing and are not dissociating themselves. And that's the whole Republican movement now. I mean, Marco Rubio hired Eric Teitzel this week for his evangelical push. And he's the executive director of the Manhattan Declaration on Life, Marriage, and Religious Liberty that got 550,000 signatures. They are beholden to these complete right-wing nutcases. Of course, they want to say the Democrats are beholden to us. But
we're us, so we think that's okay. But yeah, I mean, these guys they're getting smoother and smoother in their debates.
Not Kevin, I was going to say not Kevin Swenson.
No, Kevin Swanson. Please go to rightwingwatch.org and look up Kevin Swanson's video. It will horrify you. If you're on the fence about anything, this will push you right over the edge. But the Republican presidential candidates are getting smoother. This is why there should be more debates for the Democrats and everybody, because it gives them a chance to get practiced at this, and the Republicans are getting their act together.
Well, I mean, speaking of Rachel, she had the forum in South Carolina where she interviewed all the candidates individually for extensive, and it wasn't stupid or anything, but I have to say I hardly learned anything new about any of the candidates.
Well, it's because we pay attention, but they are, between that and other speeches they're giving, Hillary spoke to South Carolina Equality that weekend.
LGBT rights group.
Yes, and Bernie is certainly reaching out to us. Martin O'Malley, here's the latest on Martin O'Malley, who has really decided he's seeking our vote. He's in favor of repealing HIV criminalization, stopping violence against transgender people, helping LGBT immigrants in detention, helping LGBT homeless youth, comprehensive sex education, and banning conversion therapy.
Who is this guy? No, he used to be the mayor of Baltimore and the governor of Maryland.
Hillary, I want to get to this. Where is
Hillary, she now says that when she supported DOMA in 1996, the conversations about a possible constitutional amendment versus same-sex marriage, well, they were private. I'm sorry if I misspoke about that.
Yes.
I'm wrong about the public debate, which she was.
But let's focus on the Equality Act, she says, in the future.
Lots of transgender issues.
But if you look at her speech to the South Carolina Equality Dinner,
but you can read online.
She is, boy, you think the Republicans are good. She talked about Chase Culpepper, the transgender woman who went to get a driver's license and was rejected because she did not appear in the form of her biological birth. She referred to same-sex marriage. She talked about Police Chief Crystal Moore, fired, and then the town rebelled.
She's
and
really
got her
keeping up on. She must watch this show.
She talked about the Equality Act. She talked about health care for LGBT people.
Hi,
she
Hillary.
talked about HIV. She talked about honorable discharges for those who'd been thrown out of the military for being gay. She talked about the need for open service by transgender people in the military, violence against transgender people, and international issues. I wanted to quit this show and just hand it over to Hillary.
Let Hillary do it. Speaking of veterans, there is a federal bill to give federal benefits to those who were dishonorably discharged, not going anywhere in the Congress. But our state senator, Brad Hoylman, openly gay, has a bill to restore veterans benefits to those in New York who were dishonorably discharged for homosexuality or being transgender, which is not in the federal bill.
Right.
Because until they resolve, they're working on it, right? On transgender inclusion in the military. But what about all these people who were thrown out?
And as you referred to obliquely, President Obama is on the cover of, or no, you said The Advocate. He's on the cover of Out. As
he's our greatest ally.
Ally, hero, icon for the Out 100. Yeah. Congratulations to him. The first sitting president on the cover of Out.
Maybe Out, because they usually have some cute guy on the cover, right? You know,
haven't we had presidents on the cover of Advocate?
Barack's not bad looking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's turn to
the Mormon Church.
Okay.
So
Always a good pivot.
I mean, we could run this tape too, and you can see this online where the Mormon elder tries to explain this. But children of gay parents who marry are now barred from the church. They're barred from baptism. And I talked to a friend who was...
The parents marry, not the kids.
Yes.
Yeah.
Gay parents who get married to each other, the
Yes.
parents, they're barred from the church. You know, and can maybe disagree with it. I think they're lucky not to be brought up in the church. They're spared membership at a bigoted church. They can join when they turn 18 as long as they condemn same-sex marriage and sex and no longer live with their parents. Now, the same rules apply to kids of polygamous marriages.
Yes.
As part of the rule. Now, as I said, one of the things that and there's a gay couple who, one of the guys was married to a woman. They had kids together. She's still a practicing Mormon, and he's worried that something's going to happen to the kids because he has part custody of them, even though he's not a member, you know, that kind of stuff.
It's an open question. We don't know how the church will treat that situation. Also, the same-sex married parents are declared apostate in and of themselves. Perhaps you would like to explain apostasy for us.
I mean, it's just not, you know, conforming to doctrine, essentially.
There were dozens of protesters who showed up in Temple Square in Salt Lake to protest this pronouncement by the church. And it really is somewhat confounding because the church has, in other ways, appeared to be reaching out to LGBT people.
They told their members, if you work in civil society and you've got to do issue same-sex marriage licenses, you do it, because that's your civic duty.
And they collaborated on this so-called Utah Compromise non-discrimination law.
Which doesn't make them do anything.
Well, yes, there's a large religious exemption, but nonetheless, their imprimatur was considered important for passing this non-discrimination bill.
Come on, it's no different from what the bishops in Rome just did, where they held to doctrine and condemned us and condemned homosexuality and condemned same-sex marriage, etc. So it's true for Catholics as well.
Kids are getting thrown out of Catholic schools for having same-sex parents. Right. So you're right, it's across the board.
On all your houses, stop worshiping false gods and love everybody.
Actually, the small shocker today was when Kate Kendall, the executive director of the National Center for Lesbian Rights, who's been here as a guest more than once, and was brought up as a Mormon in Salt Lake, announced that she was asking for her name to be taken off the rolls of the church. Really? Now?
Look, I'd like to be excommunicated. I'm disappointed that they haven't pronounced me excommunicated from the Catholic Church, but apparently it's a difficult process. You got to go back to your old parish where you were baptized and get some form. Forget it. Just do it to me.
Well, she has officially asked to be separated from the church, which she separated herself from years ago, but...
Cast me to the outer darkness.
Meanwhile, on the other hand, the Reformed Jews have adopted a policy of not only supporting transgender people, but going beyond that to aggressively train their staff, become advocates for the rights of transgender people. They want things like gender-neutral bathrooms at summer camps.
We all need training on this issue, and we invited your comments last week. Asked you to write to us at Andy Hum at AOL, and I shared everything with Ann, and you did write in a lot of comments that were, and people are a little bit all over the map on these issues.
But very thoughtful comments,
yes,
and we really appreciate people taking the time to write. And the issue that we put out there was, okay, certainly no question as far as we're concerned on bathroom rights. You're in a situation, a bathroom where everybody has privacy and stalls. But the issue had arisen in Illinois of a transgender student in a girls' locker room.
She's on the girls' team, and right now when she goes into the locker room, she goes behind a curtain.
Right.
And they have an open area. Yeah. And the question is, since she has a penis, you know, is it okay for her to be naked with the other girls? And is that, you know, maybe the girls don't mind? I don't know, but we you know, we have some concerns about the other girls as well.
Well, particularly in a world world where many, many, many women have been sexually abused and raped, and have some PTSD about male bodies, and or penises in particular. So this becomes an issue to ponder. So
and you'd have to work through all these issues.
So some viewers were sensitively and thoughtfully talking about ways in which you might negotiate this in sensitivity to all people and privacy for all, setting up situations where everybody has privacy. And some viewers said, look, if we are going to understand that transgender women are women, then the formula we have to come to terms with is some women have penises and some women have vaginas, and that is something that we are going to have to understand and become used to. And in this country, that when you have Kevin Swanson preaching death to homosexuals, it's a leap to think we're going to get to that understanding completely.
Let's ask Ben Carson what he thinks.
Oh my God! Well, we know what he thinks.
We do know what he thinks.
Separate but equal. That's what Ben Carson thinks. Separate but equal.
And we know what.
But we appreciate the input. I think this is an ongoing discussion. And we all have to learn. And, particularly with the November 20th coming up, which is the Transgender Day of Remembrance.
International.
Which is particularly poignant with more and more murders reported this year. And violence against...
and the operative word is reported, because these are things that went unreported for generations.
Exactly, and much, I suspect, still goes unreported.
But we want to tell you about the horrifying story in West Des Moines of... it is West Des Moines, Iowa. The ACLU is suing the Drury Inn Hotel for discrimination versus a black transgender woman, Megan Taylor. The staff at the Drury Inn started asking Megan all kinds of questions when she came through to stay there, and she's on her way to a funeral.
She and a friend, also an African-American transgender woman,
so
on their way to a funeral.
They gave her a hard time. They were nasty to her. They gave her the room, but then they called the police on suspicion.
And she had stayed there before.
Yeah, suspicion that they were sex workers. She landed in solitary confinement, charged with possessing hormones without a prescription. That charge was dropped.
How many of you carry your prescription with you when you are driving on a trip?
No evidence of prostitution. 8 days in solitary. Missed the funeral.
Days.
So the ACLU is suing, and I hope you take them for everything they got. That's the only way that sometimes that's the only way people are going to learn.
Well,
what a horror show.
What could be a more poignant and direct example of how transgender people, and particularly transgender women of color, are treated in this country?
Walking down the streets of New York with all these liberal politicians and everything, they get picked off constantly, arrested for prostitution when they have nothing to do with it. Even if they did, what's the big deal? But, I mean, they don't. Just for being it's called walking while transgender, right here in New York.
And meanwhile, speaking of horror stories, there is this group of hundreds of gay people who put together this change.org petition asking that LGBT organizations eliminate the T. Drop the T.
When I looked yesterday, it was 1,653 signers to it. It's an anonymous petition, which is cowardly. And all the major groups that they're writing to saying drop the T are saying no. I mean, the person who put it up there supposedly was interviewed. We don't know that for a fact on the Federalist, which is a conservative site.
Very.
And they're just saying, oh, I'm an atheist. I'm very liberal, but we've got to.
Transgender ideology is not compatible with the rights of women, gay men, and children. Nonsense. Nonsense.
Right. It's not going to happen. I mean, look, we know that that's out there in the community in some parts.
Well, we know there is continuing need for education and need for all of us to talk to each other and understand this stuff. Look, what just happened at the University of Missouri with the racist incidents and the calls for the resignation of the president of the university and the football team getting behind the hunger striker. The hunger striker was very explicit in his list of complaints against the university, and it included not just racism, but homophobia. We are all in this together, and Michael Sam was on that football team 2 years ago, and certainly that may have helped contribute to their social consciousness. But to think that we can separate people out, you know, when you separate people out, you make yourselves weaker because you are cutting off the critical mass it takes for all of us to move forward.
I mean, you know, I certainly experienced some anti-gay prejudice when I was in college at the University of Virginia. But in general, what I liked about college is that all the nonsense that went on in high school about kids picking on each other for the smallest kinds of things, which was intolerable, the bullying, you know, kind of ended because we were all from different parts of the country. We were finally together, and there was sort of a respect of differences that went on for a while.
That was the Wayback Machine. You're old.
It's gotten worse?
Evidently.
Well, I don't know if it's gotten worse or better in New Jersey, but they just criminalized bestiality. Somebody noticed that it wasn't on the books. I don't know why I'm talking about it on this show, but Chris Christie signed that.
Well, hallelujah for him. I'd rather talk about New Mexico, where we have good news about a trans teen, Alex Trujillo.
This is the Grants Cibola, C-I-B-O-L-A school district,
where they have adopted a non-discrimination policy for gender expression and identity because Alex, a trans female teen, wanted to be treated better. And we have a local news report that shows Alex and her mother, her parents.
It's great when the parents are in on it.
Let's look at that.
Laguna Acoma High School senior Alex Trujillo is transgender. She was born male, but identifies as female. That's meant many tough battles, and now finally a victory.
I felt like I existed in a world that had no place for me. And now it's finally changing, and I'm beyond happy.
The school board has made monumental policy changes all because of Alex.
This young lady deserves every opportunity in the world to succeed, and we want her to do that.
The rules now explicitly say no one can face discrimination based on gender identity or expression. It moved Alex's mom to tears.
To hear each board member say, I approve, and it was a great feeling.
Because she says Alex is finally getting the respect she deserves. For example, Alex can now choose to use the women's bathroom. Before, she had to use the men's bathroom, which made her very uncomfortable. Now she just hopes the momentum keeps up.
It's scary, but it's also empowering.
To pave the way for others like her. In Cibola County, Megan Cruz, KOAT Action 7 News.
Under the new policies, the school says Alex can play for a girls' sports team, but the New Mexico Activity Association has the final say. And right now, they say the gender on your birth certificate determines which teams you can join.
Well, that's a heartwarming story.
It is.
About people.
Well, it's like people were depressed about Houston, but then Dallas passed the non-discrimination law. People are depressed about trans women being abused in Iowa, but then you have this lovely story out of New Mexico.
And we got
it's a mixed world.
And we got a lovely bulletin while we were sitting here that because of this thing about people who are gay members being essentially called apostates if they get married and all this kind of stuff, thousands are leaving the Mormon Church as a direct result of that. That was the last straw for them. But you're going to have a smaller, purer church.
You've been yearning for that for the Catholics, too.
Yes.
And another nice little story from...
that was Pope Benedict's desire as well.
Yeah.
Make it smaller, but make it purer.
Okay.
Fine with me. Of course, it's not fine in Buffalo, where at St. Columba Brigid Roman Catholic Church, they had a sign outside that said, Jesus had 2 dads, and he turned out just fine. So the archdiocese got it taken down, even though it was meant to refer to a father and a stepfather. But the archdiocese said it could be understood in a heretical way.
These people have no sense of humor. In Conway Springs, Kansas, teacher Tom Leahy was in trouble because he'd done an exercise in his classroom where he had kids fantasize making up their own little countries, I think, or organizations, and making their own rules. And some of them were exclusionary and homophobic. We're not going to have any gays in this country. So he
sounds like Donald Trump or something.
Well, he showed a film to the classes, Love Is All You Need, which is a video that's been around for a while that posits a homosexual world where heterosexuals are discriminated against in an attempt to get people to
I saw a musical like that,
empathize. And he got in trouble for showing the film, and some parents were upset, and he was on leave for a while. And the understanding was that he was going to come back from leave and resign. But he goes on leave and he decides, no, I'm not resigning. I'm going back into the classroom. So Tom Leahy is back in the classroom in Conway Springs, Kansas.
And Yusuf Mack, the pro boxer who said he was bisexual last week, now says he's gay. He's 35, he's got 10 kids, the oldest is 23. She said he should kill himself because he's embarrassing the family. He says, I'm still me, I'm fine, I'm happy.
I'm free and happy now. We'll see what he tells us next week.
Okay.
Back to teachers in Houston. A couple of teachers are suing because they were fired, I believe.
It's a daycare center. It's called the Children's Lighthouse Learning Center. It's sort of a school in K-A-T-Y near Houston. Katy. Anyway, they refused to accept a 6-year-old transgender boy as a boy. So they were fired, and they're suing, and they're using Andy Taylor as their lawyer, who brought the case versus the Houston Equal Rights Ordinance. And the women are claiming discrimination based on...
Andy Taylor, the sheriff of Mayberry?
That's his name. I thought the same thing, but his name is Andy Taylor, just like Tony Perkins is the head of the right-wing group, and just like the actor.
Yeah.
Anyway, the women are claiming discrimination based on religion, gender, and age. The woman said, I trust God. I stood up for the protection of all children.
They describe accepting a trans kid at age 6 as child abuse. I think we've seen enough documentaries in the last couple of years about very young kids being quite clear about their gender identity to dispute that. But even so, what if he decides later on to be Yusuf Mack? Who knows?
All you're doing is sending these kids into the street. And we help them at New Alternatives for Homeless LGBT Youth. And if you'd like to help celebrate Kate Barnhart, our executive director's 40th birthday, this Saturday, 7 o'clock at St. John's, they're at 80 Christopher Street.
These teachers said, if we accept this kid, it could send the wrong message to the other kids. They could all come in every day and say, well, I'm this or I'm that. And I thought, what a great classroom that would be if these kids could come be whatever they wanted day after day.
And I have another announcement for this Saturday.
Yes.
On November 14th, we're going to have the memorial service for Reverend John McNeil, who was the pioneering gay priest, died at the age of 91, I think. 2:30 at the LGBT Community Center. I'll be there.
And one more bad story from New York City, a grinder hookup, assault. A guy agrees to meet someone at a hotel on West 27th Street. When they meet, the first guy rejects the other guy. He goes away, comes back with 3 friends, and they beat and rob the original guy. Not good.
In Fayetteville, Arkansas, a circuit judge there has rejected the delay in the implementation of the LGBT rights ordinance that they passed. This will test the Arkansas law that says that municipalities can't protect more than the state does, and that's an open question whether LGBT rights ordinance violate that law.
Okay.
And it was a nice story in Palm Springs where we've had recent trouble, but and although we've elected a lot of gay officials, at the 29th Pride Festival, several Coachella Valley high school schools participated. They have gay straight alliances in most of the schools there.
They sent their bands, right?
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to marriage news.
Yes.
We need to pick up the pace.
Well, in Kentucky, Governor-elect, the right-wing Republican Matt Bevin, says he will order changes to marriage licenses so that clerks don't have to put their names on them. Kim Davis doesn't sign them anyway, but it's nice not to have to worry about having her name on the wall, I suppose, if you get a license. The current Democratic governor, Steve Beshear, says only the legislature has the power to change that. They meet in January.
The Republicans complained about executive orders by Obama, but now the first thing Matt Bevin's going to do is issue an executive order.
It's all whose ox is gored.
It always
to
is.
Quote your mother.
But exactly. But the Sixth Circuit has rejected Kim Davis's latest appeal of her various convictions and orders.
Since the Supreme Court ruling on marriage, June 26, 96,000 same-sex marriages, according to the Williams Institute, 11% of all marriages, as we make up for lost time, of course. Gary Gates there at the Williams says that the data shows that the majority of same-sex couples will soon be married in this country. As of October, 486,000, 45% of all same-sex couples that they estimate in this country.
In Arkansas, a retired justice of the Supreme Court of Arkansas says that the court voted for same-sex marriage, but never issued their ruling because they were chickens and they let the Supreme Court ruling come into effect.
In Mississippi, they had a 4-hour hearing on the ending the ban on same-sex couples adopting. This is the big thing. And in Michigan, the couple that ended up bringing the marriage case finally got to adopt their 5 kids. It started out as an adoption case. Now they got to marry. All right, international news.
Let's segue to marriage news internationally. Ireland, finally, the marriages will start Monday, November 16th. Everything has been signed, delivered, and is legal now in the Republic of Ireland.
You got to give your notice of intent to marry. But a lot of people did it for domestic partnerships so they could get married. And existing civil partnerships won't automatically be recognized as marriages unless the couple so choose.
But in Northern Ireland, they're still fighting for marriage rights. And a gay male couple who went to England to get married and came back to their home in Northern Ireland have asked a court to declare them still married in Northern Ireland, although Northern Ireland does not recognize same-sex marriage yet.
In Costa Rica, they brought a criminal complaint against 2 women who married because the registry listed one as a man. But this
it was a mistake.
Apparently since birth. Anyway.
Well, yes, and Costa Rica will try to force the marriage to be annulled, but the couple is going to fight this, and they're fighting for their marriage rights.
At the behest of the right wing, Slovenia will hold a referendum on same-sex marriage December 20th. It's pushed by a Catholic group called Children Are at Stake. Anyway.
The parliament passed a law allowing marriage between 2 consenting adults. This, as in Houston, or as Prop 8 in California, will be an attempt to override that parliamentary approval. But in Australia, the Senate there has rejected the idea of a public vote on marriage. They are continuing to push for a parliamentary vote because even though the public supports same-sex marriage, they think this should be a parliamentary function, but it needs the Prime Minister to allow a free vote on it.
In the country of Colombia, the Constitutional Court has ruled that same-sex couples must be allowed to adopt children.
Yes, and the Catholic Church is freaking out over this. Part of the decision was based in part on a Williams Institute brief that showed, as we have known for many years, that there is no difference in outcome for the children of same-sex or opposite-sex parents.
Catholic Church is freaking out in Hong Kong. 9,000 marched in the LGBT Pride March there, and the Catholic Cardinal Tong urged Catholics to consider candidates' positions on marriage equality and gay rights when voting on November 22nd, and not in a good way. But the auxiliary bishop there, Bishop Chung, compared homosexuality to drug abuse, but added, "We still love drug addicts."
Implying that he still loves us even though hating the sin. In Japan,
yes.
A second Tokyo district, Setagaya, has certified same-sex couples in civil relationship. We have a picture of the first couple, Hiroko Masuhara and Koyuki Higashi, who are the first to receive a certificate for their relationship.
A very handsome couple they are.
They are cute.
Yes.
They were actually married in 2013, although the marriage, of course, is not legal. One is an actress, the one on the right, and they have been pushing
Well, there's a lot of
for
pressure for this. In Honduras, 6,000 people signed a petition for a citizens' initiative to legalize same-sex marriage, but they have to amend the Constitution there to do it, and the president of the Congress there opposes it.
Let's see.
In the Ukraine, they blocked gay rights legislation. They only got 117 votes out of 450 in the parliament for it, and this may scupper their chances of a visa-free travel through the European Union.
In Russia, we've been telling you about the proposed law that would ban being out on the grounds that it violates the propaganda law.
It's brought by the Communist Party.
But it only applies to men.
Yes, I know.
Because women are more reasonable and respected.
Crazy.
Well, you saw the lovely Japanese
In Uganda, gay Ugandans who fled to Kenya are finding things not much better and in some cases worse, even when they make it to a United Nations for a High Commission of Refugees refugee camp because they encounter homophobia from some of the workers who are from...
Yes, they're sending back messages to Uganda saying to gay Ugandans, if you can survive maybe hiding out in Uganda, stay there because it's not going to be any better for you here.
I want to warn you about sex in Dubai. A Filipino male dressed as a woman lured a Turkish male to a Dubai hotel for sex. And the Turkish student got 18 months for this encounter for consensual sex and assaulting and robbing the Filipino guy, who was acquitted, but he's suing to get his stuff back, and they're both being deported, the Turkish guy, after serving his sentence.
I couldn't follow most of that.
No,
In
okay.
Zambia,
Play it slowly later.
In Zambia, a trans woman was convicted of sodomy after allowing a male cab driver to have anal intercourse with her. Because it was anal intercourse, she was then convicted as gay. Crazy. I know, you can't follow that either. And watch out for Barbados. This weekend, All Out says 50,000 Christians are expected to march in an anti-gay demonstration.
All right.
Barbados.
I won't go there.
And a couple of things from England. In Nottingham, England, we've been following the case of a National Health Service chaplain, hospital chaplain Jeremy Pemberton. He's a Church of England minister. He got married to his male partner, and he was fired by the Church of England from his hospital chaplaincy because they allow civil partnerships but not marriages for their ministers. So he took this to court, and he's lost an employment tribunal. He has lost his case because they said, hey, you defied the church knowingly, you're out.
They have a state religion there.
Yeah.
That's why the Anglicans treat things differently than the Church of England.
But the really interesting news from England comes from a study at the University of Essex, which studied 345 women, some reportedly straight, some reportedly lesbian. They checked their arousal. You know, they showed them pictures of men, women,
Dilation
etc.
of their pupils and things, right?
Well, it turns out that the lesbians are pretty lesbian. They're pretty uniformly aroused just by women. But the straight women, it turns out, were pretty much all aroused by women as well as men. So the conclusion of the study is there are no straight women.
Women are liberal.
No, women are perhaps more free in expressing their arousal, although these things are monitored electronically. They're not reported.
Okay.
Anyway,
AIDS news?
You figure it out. Yes,
All
AIDS
right.
news.
Well, in California, they've got a November 2016 ballot initiative requiring actors in adult films to wear condoms. It's being pushed by the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. Michael Weinstein, who's also the one who opposes PrEP. But they passed it in LA County in 2012, where there's no longer a porn industry.
90% of porn production left LA when they passed this.
His attitude is there's no area of employment where safety is optional. But the industry says it's unconstitutional and says it will push the filmmakers to the underground and where it's a bad idea.
Well, it does seem it's a little paternalistic. But I don't buy this industry response that, hey, we test everybody every 14 days. We've had no transmission in the last couple of years. Testing everyone every 14 days is sort of, locking the barn after the horse is out. I'm not sure that's the answer. PrEP could be part of this, but it doesn't protect against sexually transmitted diseases.
If a condom breaks, however, PEP has been the answer. Post-exposure prophylaxis. For 30 years, it's been the answer. Everybody does it in occupational settings. You need to do it if you have a suspect encounter. Now, in New York, there's going to be a hotline, 212-604-1701. And you call that any hour of the day or night. They'll connect you to somebody. They'll call a prescription into the pharmacy. Okay?
They have released the
Mount Sinai.
full 600-page, I believe, text of the Trans-Pacific Partnership that everyone's been arguing over and that Hillary Clinton finally came out against, and Bernie Sanders. And the Republicans they sort of are. Bobby Jindal was asked about it this week, and he said, I'm against it. I don't trust Obama on any agreement. I haven't read it, but I'm against it.
All right.
But it does have huge protection for pharmaceutical company profits and patents, and does not mention the anti-gay countries that are part of it.
All right, entertainment. I want to recommend one play and warn you about another. King Charles III is all about Prince Charles becoming king. There's Tim Pigott-Smith. You remember him from Jewel and the Crown, playing Charles. It's when he becomes king after his mother dies there. By the out-gay playwright Mike Bartlett, who wrote Cock about bisexuality. It's in iambic pentameter. It's some of the most clever, smart dialogue you're going to hear on Broadway all year. I enjoyed it tremendously. I listened to every word.
That would be King Charles III.
But the less said about Thérèse Raquin at Studio 54, the better. It's a lugubrious melodrama based on Émile Zola. It's a waste of Keira Knightley's, who was so good in The Imitation Game. Especially a waste of the beloved Judith Light, who we do love. But if you're in a good mood, Thérèse Raquin will help bring you down.
Well, I would like to recommend, for those who prefer movies, a documentary festival playing this next week. Particularly the movie Real in the Closet, which is a compilation of LGBT home movies starting in the 1930s. 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. Some of it is just...
There were gay people then?
It's just guys partying. Some of it is demonstrations. Home movies of Christine Jorgensen, pre and post-op. If you go to docnyc.net, you can get the whole list of all movies in the festival. I love documentaries. Yes. I watch far more of those than anything else.
Truth is stranger than fiction.
Yeah, well, it is, and constantly entertaining. So this documentary NYC festival is full of riches. There's one about Ori Kelly, the costume designer in the movies, women in dresses or something. I'm sorry, I've got the title wrong, but docnyc.net will give you the full schedule of movies at the Documentary Film Festival. And we will see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.